Good day to you. This is your teacher of civic education, Mr. Mulenga C. So I want to introduce you to grade 11 civic education. So I'll run you through some of the topics that we're going to cover, where we'll look at some of the key concepts under each topic. So here are some of the topics: the civil society and media in governance, media and governance, economic and social development, gender equity and equality, culture of peace, child abuse, and Zambia's legal system. So these are going to be our main topics that we shall look at together. Now, we're going to start with our first topic, and that is the civil society. So some of the objectives that we're going to achieve will be to describe the civil society organizations, classify civil society organizations in Zambia, and analyze the roles of civil society in governance, as well as to discuss forms of citizen participation in governance. So those are going to be our objectives. Now, let's get straight into the definition of the civil society. What is a civil society? Now, the civil society is a concept that has no single definition. So it has several definitions. However, the general one that you must be able to know is that the civil society refers to those non-military, non-governmental organizations and individuals who make it their business or their aim to promote and defend the basic ideals of good governance outside the government. So what this simply means is that these organizations, first of all, which are non-military, and they are not controlled by the government. And their aim is to promote and defend good governance. So that's a basic concept about the civil society organizations. Now, what are some of the characteristics of the civil society? Number one, it is non-profit making, or we commonly call this as benevolent. It is voluntary in nature. So when we say it is non-profit making, we simply mean it does not just aim at making money or making profit. Instead, it aims at serving the people. It also draws membership from formal and informal organizations and associations. It also shapes its own needs and interests. So we're looking at the features which these civil society organizations contain. It also draws support from well-wishers such as donors and other institutions. On this particular one question that usually pops up is, how do these civil society organizations, if they are non-profit making, make money? Where do they make money to sustain their operation? So the answer is here: from well-wishers such as donors and other institutions. It is also not guided by regulatory framework as the state is, meaning that it does not have those restrictions in its operation. As long as it is doing something that is within the law, then it is accepted. Now, it also works within a specific environment which determines its operation. So those are some of the characteristics or features of the civil society. In case you see a question asking you to say, what are some of the features of the civil society, you must be able to pick out some of the answers from this. Now, let's classify these civil society organizations in classes or in their respective classes. So we have those we call international or regional organizations. Now, These international organizations are organizations which do not only operate in one country or which are not restricted to only one area. So these are organizations which you'll find in several countries or different regions. For example, the Women in Law and Development in Africa, WIDA. We also have the Women in Law in Southern Africa, WILSA. We also have the International African Network for Human Rights and Development, AFRONET. Then we have the Media Institute of Southern Africa, MISA. Then we also have the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC. Now, SADC is very, very, common, as this is something that even when you were in grade, 7, you were able to hear. Now, SADC, one notable thing about SADC is that it has given a responsibility to all, or a target to say so, to all member states who belong to SADC, that they should have at least a minimum of 30% women participation in parliament, meaning that at least 30% of the MPs or members of parliament should be female. Have we achieved that as a nation yet? I don't think so. We are somewhere around 25% at present. Now, Transparency International Zambia is another international organization. Now, when we look at Transparency International Zambia, it is an international organization which runs in almost all the countries. If you look at this map, these are areas where Transparency International Zambia, has been able to, look into corruption levels. So these shades of colors, like the red, yellowish, and like, so these colors which are showing, the yellowish colors, like the United States here, Australia, in some parts of Europe, they're indicating lower levels of corruption. Here, where it is a little bit darker, red, these are higher levels of corruption countries, according to Transparency International. So this map of the world is simply showing us that the Transparency International Zambia is an international, organization. So these are some of the international organizations as a class. Now, our next, classification is the pressure groups. Now, pressure groups are civil society organizations formed to influence government policy and decisions on a particular subject. So this is to mean that these pressure groups are there to ensure that if the government has come up with a bad policy, for example, they'll be able to speak against that in order for the people to be represented well. Now, pressure groups sometimes tend to come up with, programs such that if they achieve that program, they tend to cease to exist. This is to mean that pressure groups usually disband and cease to exist once their objectives have been achieved. For instance, the Committee for Clean Campaign disbanded after the 1996 elections. Some other notable, pressure groups are the Oasis Forum and the Zambia Consumer Association. So this is the Keep Zambia Clean Campaign. I don't know when last you heard of the Keep Zambia Clean Campaign. It was so intense, okay, in the recent years. But because their target was, achieved rather, you discover that it actually, ceased to exist. So you discover that when you look at these pressure groups, once they achieve their target, they tend to cease to exist. Now, I'm taking you straight into our next category, and these are women's groups, women's interest groups. Now, women's groups are concerned with promoting and protecting women's rights. As simple as that. Now, examples of women groups include Women for Change, the National Women's Lobby Group, the NWLG. We also have the Forum for African Women Educationalists of Zambia, FAWEZA. We also have Women in Development with WID. We also have Society for Women Against AIDS in Zambia, SWAZ, the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA. We also have, the, several other associations which we might not highlight here. There are a lot of them. So these are just, examples. As you're able to see in this picture, we have the Young Women Christian Association. They were usually, let me say they've been an organization that speaks on behalf of young women. They speak on behalf of girls on issues to do with child abuse, issues to do with rape. So this was a protest against the higher levels of child abuse and rape. As you're able to see in this picture, they were going around protesting, against child abuse, so that they just create that awareness. Now, we also have a picture here where women were assembled, in the community and talked to by the Women for Change group. So these are examples of women's groups which are interested in promoting and protecting women's rights. Now, let's get to professional associations. Now, just like the name itself says, professional association. These are primarily formed by people in a particular profession to promote and protect their professional interests. For example, the Law Association of Zambia, which protects the interests of lawyers, as well as speaking on behalf of the people if their rights have been stepped on or if the law is not being respected. We also have the Women in Law and Development in Africa, the Zambia Independent Media Association, the Press Association of Zambia, the Zambia Association of Civic Education Teachers. Now, the Zambia Association of Religious Education Teachers, all these are professional, associations. The Language Teachers Association of Zambia, LATAZ, all these are examples. Now, I'm taking straight into the industrial organizations as another class of organization or classification of organizations. Now, when we say industrial organizations, we simply mean organizations formed by people in the same industry to unite workers or promote or respect, the rights of the workers. Examples of such organizations include the labor movements, which may be the Zambia Association of Manufacturers, ZAM, the Zambia National Farmers Union, ZNFU, the Zambia Chambers of Commerce and Industry, ZACCI, the Zambia Consumers Association, the Zambia Cross-Border Traders or Cross-Border Traders Association, ZCBTA, the Zambia Federation for Women in Business, ZFWB. Now, we have several industrial organizations. The Zambia National Marketeers Association, ZANAMA. Now, this one you always see it, especially when it comes to, representing the interests of marketeers in the markets. As you're able to see in this picture, we have marketeers. This is a marketplace where we have women, selling some vegetables and the like. So these women face a lot of challenges. These men and women in the markets face a lot of challenges, ranging from economic, trends to sanitation in the markets. So ZANAMA is there to represent their interests. So these are some of the industrial, organizations. Now, we also have those we call religious organizations or faith-based organizations. Now, churches and other religious organizations often speak out on governance issues such as constitutional reforms, employment, and corruption. So these are very important organizations. Examples of such organizations include the Zambia Evangelical Fellowship, the Council of Churches In Zambia, CCZ, the Catholic Commission for Peace, Justice, and Development, CCJPD, which is now known as, Caritas Zambia. We also have Young Men's Christians or Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA, and the Young Men's Christian Association, YMCA. So all these are religious organizations. The Islamic Association of Zambia. These organizations, they are not just interested in, looking at the plight of their members in these religious groups. No, they're interested in what their members or what the society or the challenges the society is facing. Okay, all the challenges the society is facing or the nation at large, these organizations are there to chip in. Be it corruption, they'll speak against that. Be it employment, they'll speak against it. Be it awareness, they'll promote that. So these religious organizations are very, very important. As you're able to see in this picture, this is the Islamic Association of Zambia. They were just in the community trying to, to help the vulnerable by giving them mealie meal and some other things to use in their homes. So these organizations are very, very important in the society. Now, we also have those we call civic organizations. Now, civic organizations are concerned with issues such as civic education, human rights, and good governance. The following are examples of civic organizations: the Zambia Civic Education Association, ZCEA, the Foundation for Democratic Process, FODEP, the Non-Government Organizations Coordinating Committee, NGOCC, Operation Young Vote, OYV, the National Movement Against Corruption, NAMAC, the Anti-Voter Apathy Program, AVAP. Now, all these are civic organizations interested in promoting human rights and good governance. So AVAP, for example, and Anti-Voter Apathy Program, for example, is there to ensure that it speaks against those people who shun elections. It explains to people, it promotes that awareness that people should be able to understand the importance of voting as it is their right. So here you discover that AVAP is trying to, show the people what they need to have for them to vote. That is the voter's card and the green national registration card, just to educate the people about it. As you are able to see on the picture here, or in the picture here, on the right, AVAP is trying to promote awareness, going around in the community, marching with the people, telling them the importance of, voting, the importance of promoting good governance. Now, these organizations, like I keep on saying, are very, very important. Now, let me run you through just a sample of some examination questions in the interest of time. Here's a question extracted from the ECZ past paper. Now, the question says, read the following passage and answer the questions that follow. Civil society refers to non-military, non-governmental, and individuals whose aim is to promote and defend basic ideals of governance outside the government. In Zambia, examples of civil societies include Foundation for Democratic Process, FODEP, the Media Institute of Southern Africa, MISA, and Transparency International Zambia, TIZ, among others. A. Name one regional organization that advocates for 30% women representation in decision making. Now, this is what I earlier addressed when we just looked at examples of international or regional organization? So the answer here should be SADC. Now, I made mention to you to say SADC has given a target to all its member states that they should achieve at least 30% of women representation in parliament. So the answer here is SADC. Now, when you're answering in the exam, you're not supposed to be writing in abbreviation form. I'm just telling you that to just as a wake-up call. Okay. So instead of saying SADC, you say Southern Africa Development Community, SADC. Next question. List any one role of civil society organizations in promoting good governance. Now, this question is very straightforward. Just like we said, in the definition of civil society, their main aim or their main role is to promote basic ideals of good governance, is to promote good governance. Now, there are several roles which we are going to even discuss further in our next meeting, which the civil society organizations play besides promoting the basic ideals of good governance. Apart from that, you may also add another role of the civil society to say they are a link between the people and the state or the government. They are a voice for the people. They speak on behalf of the people. They promote awareness. All those are roles. Now, question C. Mention any civil society organization which promotes and protects women's rights. Now, this is very, very simple. Just pick any of those women's organizations we identified. You can give an example here of the Young Women Christian Association. You can also give an example of FODEP, Forum for Democratic Process. You can also give an example of the Women in Law. You can also give an example of Young Women's Christian Association. So you will discover that there are several of them. There are several, women's organizations that you can pick from based on what we discussed earlier. Now, in our next meeting, we are going to discuss the role that these civil society organizations play. I would like to thank you for your time. Have a lovely day ahead.